A lot of us, we have gotten so used to operating at such a high level of stress that we don't even realize how stressed we are anymore. And it comes to those of you listening right now who are like, I just can't take anything off my plate. I get it. It feels hard. And at the same time, God created time to rest. He created it into the rhythm of life from the very creation of this world.
I'm excited to welcome my new friend, Amanda Beilke, to the show today. Amanda is a certified marriage and life coach with years of experience helping women to create the lives and the relationships that they truly love. And she's also the host of the You Matter podcast, where I had the privilege of being a guest and got to know her and her heart and expertise even more. So, in today's episode, you're going to hear some practical tools and encouragement and hopefully really a fresh perspective on how to build stronger connections, both with yourself and with your closest relationships. So, welcome, Amanda.
Oh, thanks, Olivia. I am so happy to be here with you. For those listening that I haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet, like Olivia shared, my name's Amanda Beilke, and I have the privilege of walking with women through their marriages, through their challenges, through their pain points, and really what they desire and how to establish that with God at the center of it all. So it's been quite a journey since I have kind of been on this road, and I think back to something that has been central, and that is God's timing has not always been what I've thought I wanted it to be in my life, right? It's His timing. I've had to wait. It's kind of that dance between that part of my life is done, but it's not quite yet time for the next part of my life, and figuring out how to really seek God in the waiting and in the challenges that show up. So I have certainly seen His timing in my singleness season, in my marriage, now in motherhood, and certainly all of those experiences and the experiences I've had with clients have tied into the work that I do as a marriage coach now.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can share with us a little bit about your journey because just as you said, you started off, single, married, now motherhood. Maybe share us a little bit about God's timing and how it's worked in your own life.
Yeah, I certainly am happy to, because we all have such a beautiful story. We all have a story that doesn't quite make sense on the outside while you're in it, or even while you're in it on the inside. But as you look back, you're like, oh, I see God's hand in every single step of
So,
that.
so
And
true.
so when I think about, going all the way back to all those single years and all the dating and all of that, I think about how many times there would be different guys that I would be on dates with, and it just wouldn't work out. It was heartbreak after heartbreak, little things that just, weren't a good fit. And what I did after each one of those, I had this journal and I would write in there, what did I like from this relationship? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about what I'm looking for in whoever God has for me in my future? So I would write about the things that I really liked, the things that I didn't like. And the list grew quite long. And I still remember the day that my now husband, had proposed to me. It was that night. I was at home and I was lying in bed, and I just happened to pull out that journal. And I hadn't looked at it, I think, in over a year. So I wasn't quite sure everything that I still had in there. And I had 19 very specific things written in that journal over all the years of dating so many different men, all the online dating, everything. And my husband, Kurt, was every single one of those 19 things.
Mhm.
And I just broke down crying. I was like, of course, God. Like, that's why you had me wait. That's why you had me go through all these different seasons of heartbreak and other things, because you knew that he was exactly who you had waiting for me, even though I didn't know it at the time. And my husband and I joke about it today because we're like, man, if we would have met any earlier, we would have never like looked twice at each other. It really was the perfect timing with that.
Yeah, I love that too because we share a similar story, but I look back and you do have perspective later. I look back at, prior relationships and the things that I loved about each one. I have told my husband and other people too. I'm like, he carries the traits of everything that I loved in all of those, and we just don't have that perspective. But for you writing that in your journal, what a
Yeah.
confirmation, right? Like to look back at that and just see like specifics of what you liked, and even for you to have had that wherewithal to begin that journal during your single dating life too.
Yeah. And I think too, that's one of the beautiful things with journaling, or if you have like a prayer journal, or I know some people that have a prayer box, when you can see all the prayers that God answers in his timing, it is such great validation. Now, that doesn't mean he answers them how you want, but just seeing how he answers them and how he still shows up in his timing. And that, when I think about that situation with my husband and then getting into marriage, we had, my husband's timing for different things was very different than mine. And we quickly realized that as much as we thought we were on the same page about starting a family and having kids and what that would look like or not look like, according to me, we were very different. Like, we had had a lot of conversations. I thought he was much more open about it. And then coming to realize, like, the more he learned about himself, the more he realized how much he really wanted to be a dad. And I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I just don't feel like God has like motherhood in my journey. I just feel like he's given me so many different gifts, and I just really want to steward those well. I want to really focus on this marriage that he's given me. And so I kind of thought, I just don't know that this is like the path that God has for me. And so we struggled with that a lot. We had a lot of different, I would say, arguments, a lot of tears, a lot of like trying to figure out what this looks like, because I was the one who at the time had gone around saying, I'm never having kids. And, my friends and family joke about it today, but I very much thought that that was not a part of God's plan for me. And I was certainly okay with that because I had become an aunt when I was 14. I have a lot of little nieces and nephews running around who I adore. And I have a lot of my best friends, little ones that are so special. And so I just felt very full in that area, just very content. And so when my husband and I started having these conversations, and me noticing how God started working in my heart, I didn't think that that was going to change. And it wasn't until I was working on a vision board where I was doing a vision for just Kurt and I and our marriage and our family. And before I knew it, I had put kids on there
Hmm.
and I showed it to him. And man, I might even cry up.
Hmm.
Um, and I showed it to him, and I was just like, I didn't realize that how much God was working in me in that. And so that was another thing that was really special to see, like how you can go from one extreme on one side to then being at that place where it's like, oh, God didn't only like shift my heart. I wasn't praying for God to shift Kurt's heart. I was just praying that God would show me what direction. And I still remember the day I found out I was pregnant. It was a total surprise because we had gotten to that point where we were just like, okay, let's just trust. Let's just trust God. We're not going to put any pressure on this. We don't even know if this is possible for our family, but we're just going to put it in God's hands and see what he does with it. And it was after a couple months that I was like, you know what? I think maybe I should probably be pregnant by now if everything's working. I was like starting to break out and having some other symptoms. I was like, I feel like something's off with my hormones. And I was like, I'm just going to order one of those expensive hormone kits because I thought, something's got to be off. Like I probably should be pregnant by now. So I should probably start looking into this and be proactive. So I had everything set up on my computer. I showed my husband which one I was going to order because, it was a little bit more expensive. And right before I hit submit, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should probably go take a test, just a pregnancy test, just to make sure. And I was pregnant. And so I never ordered the test. And, um, since then it has been a wild journey with our son, who he'll be 2 in July, and absolutely adore him. He is the best thing ever. And I just love seeing how God, what I thought needed to be shifted, maybe in, in my husband, or shifting like my perspective, God really shifted my heart. And I love that verse about, God will give you the desires of your heart, not because he gives you whatever you want, but because the more I was leaning into him, the more he was transforming my heart and my desires to align with what his own desires were for me and for our family. And I think that's such an important piece to remember, is like, no, God's not going to give you everything that you want. He's not going to give you all of your desires. But the more that you study him, the more that you draw close to him, your desires will start to align with what his are for you.
Exactly. That's so beautiful. I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that like you and your husband had these conversations. So I'm assuming
Mhm.
that the conversations before were like he understood you were coming from a place where I don't want to have any children, right? And he was okay with that, it sounds
Yeah.
like, at one point in time. And then as you grow in your relationship and life maybe gets somewhat stagnant, maybe one or both of you start to think, okay, like what else? And maybe that's when that desire got placed maybe in his
Mhm.
heart first. So then
Yeah.
his desires changed. And
Yeah.
um, so it also sounds like you've had a long history of faith. I could be wrong there, but it seems apparent that you go to God for the decisions you make in your life.
Mhm.
Has that always been the case for you?
It really has. And I'm so grateful for that. What I would say, it's been an interesting relationship, but at the base, it's always been going back to God. It's something
Mhm.
that I was raised with. My parents were incredible with that, always helping myself and my 6 older brothers just grow up in knowing who God was, who Jesus was from the very beginning. We definitely were that family that we would go to church every week and Sunday school, and we would do devotions as a family after dinner. And as much as I still remember as a kid hating the idea of sitting around the table for a devotion, I was like, "Ah, do we really have to do this again?" I'm so grateful for it now, thinking back at the time and effort that my parents put into that. Because trying to keep 7 kids around a dinner table after you're done eating to sit quiet for a devotion, that is something that you could so easily think, I'm not going to do that tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they did it every night.
I love that. I mean, yeah, I think our world's gotten a little bit away from that. And it's important to try to cultivate that or maybe bring it back, because I don't think our attention spans are as good as they once were. And like you
Yeah.
said, 7 children, that's a lot. And now you realize and appreciate, what your parents had to put into that to be able to plant those seeds for you and your siblings as well. As you share your story, you talk about communication and how important that is. So many people, and I would say especially women, feel very disconnected, I think, with today's busyness. It's nonstop. And that can lead to feeling maybe disconnected from yourself, from your partner, even your purpose. So
Mhm.
where do you suggest that somebody starts when they know, something's off, but maybe quite can't name what it is?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because in a world that we're so connected, we have been more disconnected
I'd
than
say the same.
ever, right? And so when I think about it, I even think back to different loved ones, family, friends that have gone through painful divorces that have led to a lot of the work that I do now. And now that I've been in this season of motherhood and seeing how important that foundation of your marriage is for the quality of your entire family. And it really affects how you communicate, not just with your spouse, but then what your children witness. And it's that foundation. So as much as it feels like, okay, things are so busy, I just have to take care of my kids. I don't have time for, my husband with this, but it's like, no, really, your relationship with God, that's number one. That's where everything flows from. Your relationship with your husband is number two. And then it's your relationship with your kids. Because if you don't have number one and number two straight, then number three is going to be a lot harder. And so it's the more you grow closer together, the more you grow closer to God, you grow closer to your husband. And then, you've got your kids in there too. And so when I think about communicating, it's focusing on, okay, how am I communicating with God every day? Is that through prayer? Is it through just having a conversation throughout the day? Is it some journaling? Is it some worship music? What does my communication with God look like? Am I bringing all parts of me to Him, or am I trying to only bring the polished parts, or the parts that I want to show, or am I being vulnerable with all parts? So bringing that and then thinking about, okay, now how am I communicating with my husband? Because even just the tone and how we communicate makes such a huge difference. So think about, for those listening, when you're stressed, how easy is it to snap, to say something you didn't mean, to just, you've got your to-do list running in your head. So you're just trying to get through the to-do list, and then you don't realize how that comes off to him or how he might misinterpret that, when you're just trying to be efficient, just trying to get things done because you've got so much swirling in your head. And so when you even think about communication, it comes down to managing your stress. That is at the root of so much of it, because when we can manage that stress where we're not, constantly go, 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 where we are at that point of burnout, that's when we can truly connect, when we can truly be present. Because when we're stressed, we're in that fight or flight. We can't be fully present when we're in that state. And then no matter what the words are that we say, we're not truly connecting, no matter what we're communicating.
Yeah.
And so that's really key, is that stress piece.
I think you are hitting on just perfect points. I guess just to get some practicalities out of it too is, you mentioned relationship with God, and then your spouse, and then your kids. First one would also be, where do you see your relationship with yourself? Do you kind of lump that in with God too?
I
Because
do.
I do feel like God is in us, and that's,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
And then when we talk about managing stress, I mean, you are so right on. I so align with what you're saying.
Mhm.
But, and I know I have four children, and it's busy, and I'm
Mhm.
very much about slowing down too. But I don't feel like it's possible to like take away the to-do list and the busyness. I feel like it's constantly surrounding us, and I don't think that that's going to go away. So we have to, in my opinion, learn how to, like you said, manage our stress and cultivate that peace even within the chaos that's around us or the busyness that's around us. So, what are some ways that you recommend to people when you talk to them about how do I manage that stress? How do I be okay in a world that's very busy around me all the time?
Yeah. There are so many good things in that. Even just before even thinking about like wherever your current stress level is. So for those of you listening, think about right now today on a scale of 1 to 10, with a 10 being really high and a 1 being really low. Where's your stress level? A lot of us, we have gotten so used to operating at such a high level of stress that we don't even realize how stressed we are anymore. I am definitely a product of that, where I remember I used to say I wasn't stressed at all because I was just always operating at such a high level that it became my normal, that I didn't even realize the stress that I was experiencing. So just taking that time to check in and get honest with yourself about just how stressed you are is really key. There's all the practical things that you can do, but again, that comes down to making time to do it, right? And
Mhm.
that's another thing added to the to-do list, which then in turn can stress someone else out even more. So, what I would say is think about your priorities, think about your core values and what boundaries you need to set. Because when it comes to those of you listening right now who are like, I just can't take anything off my plate, I get it. It feels hard. And at the same time, God created time to rest. God showed us that we need to rest. He created it into the rhythm of life from the very creation of this world, really being that example of how important rest is. So, rest looks different to everyone. So, you deciding what does rest look like for you in this season. I will say for some people, it might be going for a walk with your kids. For other people, that is the least restful thing they can do is going for a walk with their kids. So it totally depends on your season. It could even be just taking 10 minutes when you wake up in the morning. Everyone has, like, I would want to say 10 minutes in your day. And if you feel like you don't, then there's a bigger problem, right? If you don't have just 10 minutes throughout a 24-hour day, but just do some deep breathing. And a lot of us don't do it because we think about the to-do list and our priorities are mixed up, or we just get on to the next thing. But when we focus on what our priorities are, we make time for those things that matter. And it's just when we lose focus that we can fall into all the busyness and just hopping on our phone to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I would also say with those boundaries, one thing that I love to remember is, okay, if I'm saying yes to this, or if I'm saying yes to this person, that also means I'm saying no to this, or that also means I'm saying no to that. So an example of this is, like, let's say that you and your husband scheduled a date night, which you don't get a lot of time for, and maybe it really does feel like just another thing on the to-do list of, like, oh, I need to schedule that date night with him. And so you do it, and then you realize throughout the day, oh, I'm really busy, the kids need this or that. And so you're like, can we just reschedule? And I like to think about, how often do you reschedule with your husband something that you committed to, that you would never ask a client to reschedule, that you would never ask someone at work to reschedule that meeting. You would never ask someone else, but because you feel comfortable with your husband, they're the easiest person to break that commitment to. When strangers, neighbors, other people, we wouldn't be that quick to reschedule. And that's something important to think about too.
Yeah. I love everything that you're saying. And I especially loved how you said, when it comes to stress, like, many of us are just going through life. We don't even realize that we are, and because we're so used to this fast paced environment. And it really is counterintuitive, right? Because we feel like if we're doing something at all times, that we're being productive. And sometimes it's just the opposite. And, like, even simple things like, don't listen to anything when you're driving, just have it be slower. Chew your food a little slower. When you're in a line to check out somewhere, don't get on your phone. Just challenge yourself. Like, okay, I'm not going to get on my phone if I'm waiting in line at the grocery store. And just, like, look around. It just forces us to slow down and be kind of okay with not just, every second have to be doing something until it's bedtime. And I think you brought up a really good point, that we're just in this, like, go, 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 crash, go, state. And it just can't be healthy for us. So yeah, I think just giving people awareness of that is a really important thing.
I think it's also, like, I love that you said that, even when we're conditioned in the grocery store to, like, just scroll on our phone, I think so many of us are so stressed that we need that time to decompress. So we think, like, we automatically go to the phone, and that, I mean, has become such an issue that people don't even realize is an issue. So I'll be working with women and they're like, I just want to connect with my husband. And yet they spend an hour scrolling on their phone while sitting on the couch with their husband. Or how many times do you notice a couple out to dinner and they're both scrolling on their phones instead of actually having a conversation? So as much as you might be thinking, oh, I really want to connect and feel like I'm emotionally connected to my husband. You also have to think, how many times are you actually scrolling on your phone because you're
Mhm.
just trying to decompress from that stress and you don't even realize how unpresent you actually are when you do have the time. So it's
Such a
not
good point.
necessarily
Yeah.
about more time, it's about the quality of that time that you spend with them.
Okay, so my relationship and marriage coach, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So let's say, because I see that too, ever we go, I'm guilty of it. We get on our
Mhm.
phones. Sometimes it's so awkward, right? If you put the phones down, how do you help people to like converse again, communicate,
Mhm.
connect in a real way? What are some tips that you might have on that?
Yeah,
Because it
that's a
starts to
great
feel awkward
question.
again.
Because sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's awkward, right? Especially if you think about if you've had kids for a while, you can get in different seasons where you're so focused on them, where you are growing, your husband's growing, and you don't even start to recognize these new parts of this person that are starting to emerge as they're growing more into who they are. So they might seem different to you, right? Or you might just be so used to talking about logistics together that it's like, well, what else do we talk about? It's hard to break out of the patterns of just saying, hey, how was your day? Or listening to each other complain about work or whatever it is and have a meaningful conversation. So everyone feels a little different, but I would say my favorite thing, if you need some support in questions or conversation topics, I love conversation cards. I love just going on Amazon. I have multiple stacks that I will take them. I have some that I keep in my purse that we take out on date night so that we're always thinking of something new. It's so much fun seeing how one question can turn into the most fun conversation of something that I'm learning new about my husband. I'm like, I thought I knew a lot about you, but I didn't even know this whole side of you. And so I find so much fun with that. And a lot of the different decks of conversation cards have different categories. So you can go really deep if you want to have a deep, meaningful conversation. You can stay very light and surface level and fun if you just want to talk about like interests or things like that. And you might be thinking, okay, but I've been married for 10 years. I shouldn't need conversation
All
cards,
right.
right? And at the same time, it's not a failure if you pull out these cards because what's happening is you and your husband are connecting. And I will say you might have a little resistance depending on who your husband is at first. He might be like, "What, why are we doing these?" And then as soon as you get past the first one, I promise it gets so much better and it takes the pressure off of him. It takes the pressure off of you. And
Mhm.
it makes those conversations so much more meaningful and enjoyable. So you could
No.
do them at dinner. My husband and I do them at dinner a lot. That's one of our favorite times to do them. You could do them in the car if you're on a road trip. If you are driving somewhere, that's a great place to have a stack of them. You could do them for a dinner date night. That's a good one. Going on a walk. If you want to include your kids in it just to
Mhm.
have a better conversation around the dinner table, there are tons of different options for family questions that you can be asking too. And what I've found is not just does it deepen that connection, but you also understand patterns of your partner better. So when you hear a story about his childhood, when you hear a story about, something his mom or dad always did, you're like, "Oh, that's why you do that. I
Yeah.
get it now." Like you connect so many dots that way too.
I have seen these cards. I have not tried them, but I'm actually thinking this will be
Yeah.
fun, and I can even
Yeah.
imagine going on a, couples date with even another couple and
Mhm.
now everybody listening that knows me is like, don't answer the phone when she calls.
Right
No,
there.
but I can see where that would be fun and just kind of a fresh, different type of date.
Exactly. And the fun part about it is there are so many cards in there that you're bound to come across somewhere like, I don't like that question. Then you skip it, right? It's
Yeah.
not like you have to answer every question in there and
Yeah.
you can just have fun with it.
So let's pivot a little bit. I mean, we've talked about communication. That's a great way to get communication going again, and just the connection. What about people who have had trust broken?
Mm.
And what are some ways that you can help people who need to rebuild trust in any
Yeah,
relationship, not just even with their spouse?
that's such a good one. And we could talk for hours on trust because it's such a big one. And it really depends on what level of trust is
Sure.
broken. It depends on, is it the first time? Is it the 20th time? So there are a lot of different layers to this, but a couple of things I would say come up often with women that I work with is when it comes to trust, it's having that willingness to forgive and not carry the resentment is a huge piece. Now, forgiveness does not mean that what they did was okay. Forgiveness does not mean that you're accepting and, giving them permission, essentially. That's not what we're talking about. When I'm talking about forgiveness, I'm thinking about, okay, Jesus died on the cross. He literally died for our sins and forgave us. And if someone can die for me and forgive me, I can certainly forgive anything else anyone has done when I think about it that way, because it's so easy to think like, well, they did something illegal or they did something horrific or traumatic. Like, how could I forgive them? And the forgiveness is for you, it's to set you free. It's not about forgiving them so that, they can move on with their life. A lot of times we hold on to such hurts that the person who made the offense doesn't even remember doing. It's not holding them back in their life. Even if it's your husband who's done it, it might be something that he didn't even realize. And the more we hold on to it, the more it robs us of our peace and it robs us of connection with others. So I would say forgiveness and letting go of the resentment are two major things that are not easy to do, but they are worth the work in being willing to do them. And when it's hard, asking God to guide you, asking Him to step with you every day to learn how to forgive, that's a really big piece, and processing the emotions around that. And then what I would say when it comes to the trust is a lot of times when trust is broken with us, we don't trust ourselves anymore. We tend to feel like, how did I trust them? And then they betrayed me or they broke this trust. So not only do we have a hard time trusting
How did
others,
I fall for that again?
yeah, but we no longer trust our gut. We no longer trust our intuition. Sometimes we don't even trust God anymore. We're like, God, how could you let this happen? And so it really comes back to your relationship with God and yourself first.
Mhm.
Before trusting anyone else again and building on that, you have to build that trust with yourself and with God and
Yeah.
focusing on that relationship first. So that could look like prayer. It could look like just keeping track of different decisions that you made that felt aligned with your gut, your intuition, and noticing when that was spot on to kind of build that confidence and trusting your decisions again.
Mhm.
And then from there, once you start focusing or once you start making progress in trusting yourself, your decisions, and building that trust relationship with God, then it's okay. Now that I've done the forgiveness work, how can I start trusting this person again with
Yeah.
small things and building up from there? So, again, trust is such a big topic, and this just hits the surface, but that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And as you're saying all of this, I'm also feeling led that in the Bible, right? And when he said, who is without sin, let them cast the first stone. And I think that touches on the forgiveness part, because we have to see ourselves in everybody. And, when I had somebody teach me this once and it stuck with me, is that when somebody's doing something that you don't like or that offended you, to really try to like send them love. And I know that might be hard, and kind of say, well, look at me over there, because we're kind of in everything. I always I love trees. I go back to the, our tree of life, and that we all kind of stem from that same place. And so just because this person's branch is over here and we're over here, we're still all part of that same source. And so when we can look at somebody over there and they're doing something that we don't like, send them love and just say, well, look at me over there acting in this fashion. Well, thank God the person over here isn't doing that. I'm going to send them love for whatever it is that they need. And just to start to recognize that, we've all done things that we're not proud of. And the more that we can learn to give love where it's needed, then that can reflect back on us. And then I also always say, okay, God, what do you want me to learn from this? Because we're not going to change that other person, and that they're going to change on their own, and sometimes their change becomes of what they've witnessed our change being. But always look at every situation and say, like, what can I learn from that? Like, what are you trying to teach me through this, so that you kind of do that internal work yourself? Do you have any
That is,
comments?
yeah, that's such a like perfect question. That is gold to ask. What can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of focusing on, what they did wrong or, how bad the situation is, it's okay, God, like you're trying to teach me something here. And maybe this is the fifth time it's come up, like we talked about God's timing in everything. Maybe you haven't quite learned God's lesson for you yet with whatever the thing is that's coming up again. And even though you're like, oh, I thought I got it last time, when trust was broken with this, or when I forgave this person for this again, and it came up again. And maybe that's God saying, hey, there's something else for you to learn here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's, hey, you got to set some boundaries, because it's not about letting people walk all over you either. It's not about excusing behavior or putting yourself in harm's way, but it's forgiving and also then protecting.
Mm-hmm.
How can I protect myself moving forward? And what does that look like too?
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying. So, talking maybe we've talked about relationships, communication. What about our own selves, like the relationships with ourselves, goals or a purpose that people are trying to find for themselves? Do you have any points or strategies to help people in maybe setting and achieving meaningful and purposeful goals?
That's so good. I think that's so, so many different angles you can take that as I
Yeah.
just like feel into it around, some people love goals, some people don't. Some people find them really motivating, other people find them as like, has identifiers of all the times they've failed. That's how they would view them. So goals are a complicated topic for some people. What I love to think about, I love goals. I love setting intentions and being intentional. And when you set a goal, you probably do this already, and you probably share this with a lot of the different people that you communicate with and work with. And it's about connecting to the deeper purpose behind it. What's the why? You've probably heard the phrase, for those listening, your why should make you cry, right? So going 7 layers deep of why does that matter? Okay, well, why does this matter? And a lot of times what you'll find is your why connects back to your core values. So if you don't know what your core values are, that's a great place to start to find purpose in everything that you do, so that you're making decisions in your life day to day that align with what your core values are. Because when you make your decisions and set your goals in alignment with your core values, that's how it feels like you're on the right path. So even if you're like, I don't know what my specific purpose is, as long as you know what your core values are and you're living in alignment with that, you're going to feel like you're on the right path. Even if you don't have that purpose statement or something like that nailed down, you don't have to. Some
Mm-hmm.
people love that and other people don't, but you're going to feel like you're on the right path that God has for you when you align with those core values that He's placed in you.
I'm loving everything that you're saying, and I love how you can look at everybody's different, as we talked about trust, there's different layers of trust, and we talk about goals and not that word. I'm one of them. I don't love that word. And just how you can recognize that people come to things from different angles and different layers of depth. But as you talk about core values, so somebody listening, how do they begin to identify what are my core values?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the very first thing that I do with women that I work with in their marriage is identify their core values. So I'll give you just one question that's an easy way kind of into it if you don't know where to start, if you don't know exactly what they are. So my question I love to ask is, who is someone that you admire or respect? And what about that person do you admire or respect? So from there, you just write out, what are all the different characteristics? What are all the things about this person that I really admire or respect about them? And then from there, you translate those into values. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you really admire your mom. And let's say that your mom, she's really great at getting just the perfect gift for everyone at Christmas time. And everyone is just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like, how did you know? This is just what I wanted. So that's something that, let's say, you admire about your mom. And then when you distill that into, okay, so what values would that be? Well, if she picks out just the perfect gift, chances are she's a really good listener because she's listening to you throughout the year of the things that matter to you. She's also very thoughtful in remembering that and then intentional in picking those out. So maybe some of your values are intention. Maybe it's being a good listener. Maybe it's thoughtfulness, kindness, consideration. So that's how you start to distinguish what some of those value words could be for yourself. And I always encourage clients to have 5 to 7 of them. So for me, my values are honesty, love, faith, connection, curiosity, transparency, and this sense of groundedness. So those are the 7 that I operate from. So I know that when I'm making decisions about different things, it has to be at least in alignment with my top 3. If it ever goes against my top 3, then I know that that's that internal tug of war, that something's off, that's not the right path for me in that. So it's a really good internal compass.
You are such a wealth of wisdom. I really love everything you're saying. I love how well you articulate it all, and just sounds like you've got solutions. And I'm sure our audience listening today will appreciate all of the wisdom that you've shared. Is there anything before we close that's on your heart that you want to share?
The only thing that I would say is trust God with whatever the timing is. If you feel like, God, this timing just doesn't feel fair, it doesn't feel right, I just don't see what you're doing in the wait. For those listening, I would just encourage you to trust it. Write about whatever you feel like His timing is off on so that you can come back to it and see exactly why it worked out just the way it did 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, or whatever it is, because His timing will amaze you. And so that's what I would share for those listening.
That's so perfect. It comes full circle to the start of our story with your timing and how you looked back at everything and saw how God was, planning and perfecting the time for you. Yes. Well, thank you, Amanda, for your time today. And where can people go to find you, find out more about what you're doing, and dive deeper?
Oh, thank you so much, Olivia. I love your podcast and the purpose and intention you put behind it. So it's such a blessing and such a gift to everyone that gets to listen in. So I really just want to thank you for all the time and energy you put into serving everyone that's listening. And for those of you that want to connect and, learn more, my handle on social media everywhere is just at Amanda Beilke. So it's Amanda Beilke. So you can just find that, whether it's on Instagram or my website or anything like that, you can certainly find all of that information there, and feel free to reach out anytime. I love connecting with people. So even if you just want to share something from this episode, I love to hear what you take away from it.
Well, I have a lot of takeaways, and I will make sure to put your links below so that they don't have to remember it all. They can
Yeah.
just click on that when they're watching. And again, thank you. And I really enjoy even your voice. Even when I was speaking to you the last time, and we got to connect before, and listening to your podcast as well, you just have a very calm and soothing voice. So I'm sure it touches a lot of hearts that you interact with. So.
Thank you so
Again,
much for sharing that.
yes. Well, thank you again for being my guest today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Thank you.